I think it goes back to, again, kind of taking that step back and, obviously there's going to be times of stress, but it's also diverting that energy to something other than what you're anxious about or other than wrestling. So again, I think it just kind of goes back to keeping finding stuff that I enjoy outside of work and outside of wrestling.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talk Trash, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by the one and only Ella J. So, welcome back on the show.
What is up, Tom? I'm glad to be back.
I feel like I put this tweet out. I can't remember. It's like I feel like we've made this a yearly tradition now since I started the channel.
Yeah, 2022, 2023, and yeah, it's now 2024, which is still I'm still getting used to 2024 and saying
Mm.
that. I'm still in 2023 mode, honestly.
So am I. I'm not gonna lie. But for people that may not know Ella, I know this because we talk quite regularly and things like that. But where do you first discover wrestling as an overall fan?
As an overall fan, it was so technically, so I haven't really said this part, but I realized going back, my technical first introduction to wrestling was not even through wrestling directly. I used to watch Project Runway,
Oh
and in I
yeah.
believe it was season 2, it was at the final 6, I want to say. The designers were tasked with designing wrestling attire for 6 of the divas. So, like, I remember Michelle McCool was in that, Candice Michelle, Layla, Crystal, and a couple of other people. So technically that was my first introduction to it, but I didn't like watch after
Mm.
that. I was more of in my Project Runway fandom at that point. But then the following year after that, because that came out in 2008, the following year is when I really, fell in love with wrestling. I was scrolling through channels on a Friday night. I was in sixth going into seventh grade. It was the summer of '09. I see this guy with cool face paint. It's Jeff Hardy wrestling
Mm.
CM Punk in a loser leaves town match. That was actually Jeff's last match before
Mm.
returning in 2017. So from there, I would watch SmackDown every week. Loved the characters like Mickey James, John Morris, and DX was really my comedic relief, especially during an awkward period in my life in middle school. So
Mm.
that's how it got started though.
You talk about DX being your comedic relief there. For most people that look back on that era that grew up with DX in their prime, for lack of a better word, the word hate is a strong word, but many people dislike that era. So why did that era of DX speak to you?
So I came in at their very last like 6-month run. So I originally, obviously I've gone back and watched it. Originally, I was watching in the build up to Sean's retirement. At that point they were undisputed or maybe not undisputed, but they were tag champs at that point.
Is that where
Um
they beat the Big Show and Chris Jericho?
Yes. So
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it is. So I didn't originally at that point I hadn't seen their previous work in like '06, which I think '06 is my favorite DX era, by the way.
yeah.
Or their stuff in like the '90s and early 2000s. So for me, I would love the DX Christmas commercials they would do. They would also target the wrestlers that I didn't like at that time,
Mm,
like Straight Edge Society. I just they just brought me so much joy, especially at a time where middle school is hard.
mm.
So they provided me with an escape, and obviously all the other characters I did, but definitely DX provided me with a lot of laughs during that time. I wish I found them a bit sooner. But obviously I've gone back and watched it since. But yeah, DX was definitely one of the few leads to wrestling for me.
Mm. You talked about there wishing you'd gone back and watched them sooner. What is a moment from maybe their '06 run, because you said that's your favorite, or the '90s run that you're like, okay, I'm sad I missed out on this, but then is there also a moment that you're like, yuck, I'm glad I wasn't watching during this point?
So '06, they were terrorizing Jonathan Coachman at that time, and they were just so unhinged. Looking back in retrospect with some of the recent developments, it's kind of awkward to think about now, but
Mm,
when they like what's it called, impersonated the Shane and Vince McMahon, they had that feud with them. Also that was the time where Sean had that that famous thing at Cyber Sunday, I want to say, where he super kicked Stan. That was a great moment too.
But
So,
Sean
you know,
Spears.
yeah, yeah. So, DX terrorizing like Jonathan Coachman and them like branding Vince's plane with spray paint and them taking over the production truck. I think them taking over the production truck might be one of my favorites. Um a lot of their 90s stuff, I was just barely alive in the Attitude Era, so I I have even had a chance to watch that. But honestly, I mean, if we're talking about Shawn and Triple H, like just those two, I would say that '06 is their best run. They didn't have a lengthy run because Shawn got injured in '98 and then Triple H took over. But if we're just talking purely Shawn and Triple H, I think '06 is my favorite era of theirs.
And the irony is, the 06 07 era came to an end because Triple H got injured.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
injuries,
think.
and then obviously, leading into Shawn's retirement, they lost the tag titles in early 2010. Then they pivoted to Shawn and Undertaker. I don't acknowledge the brief reunion we had in 2018 because that match was a mess.
Oh yeah.
It was, but yeah, '09. I am always thankful for '09 DX and those
So what
Christmas commercials, man.
do you remember the commercial? You'll remember this because you grew up on wrestling at the same time as me. I don't know if this was a UK exclusive one, but there was a commercial for a DVD after Sean's retirement, I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm thinking of the Jeff Hardy one.
Mm.
But yeah, I know which one you're talking about too. I remember the Kelly Kelly one too, where Sean is just saying all of these wrong names, the incorrect names for the
Mm.
video game systems. He's like Y box and PS like 4000 and stuff, and then Kelly Kelly is correcting him and turning the thing
Oh,
around, just playing into the notion that Sean is technologically deficient, kind of.
mm.
That was good lighthearted stuff.
That's brilliant. So when you discover wrestling, are you one of those people that's like, for me, I know in that at that time in 2009, I was very much, I need to watch everything. I need to record everything. I need DVDs. Was you one of those people, or was you someone that eased into wrestling rather than watching everything?
No, I'm not much of a. I have a couple DVDs. I wasn't much of like a video game or like DVD person unless it was for my favorites. I think I only own three, technically four action figures. And I have a couple DVDs, but they're all related to like my favorite top wrestlers. But apparel wise and ticket wise and watching it, yes, absolutely. Mondays and technically then it was Monday and Friday. Then it used to be Monday and Tuesdays, depending on the day. But yeah, Raw and SmackDown every week. I would always hustle to get tickets. I would make my dad wait. I would clamor to the phone getting ready to buy those pre-sale tickets. I still have a lot of my old merch from like 15 years ago now at this point, even like I have a 2010 calendar, WWE calendar still with me.
Oh
And
wow.
a lot of the old WWE magazines because I was subscribed to that for 3 years. So yes, excluding like action figures and like I have a couple DVDs, but other than that, yeah, I was absolutely addicted.
Mm. So is there a moment that so you talk about being addicted in the 2010s and things like that? Are you one of those people that has a gap in their wrestling fandom, or not really?
No, not at all, honestly. It's been a consistent thing. I've been in at first obviously like I didn't have any like real life friends for a couple years, but then I connected through wrestling fandom online. So that's been a better part of 2013. So 11 years I've been in the wrestling, like say the IWC, the internet wrestling community in some form or fashion for almost 11 years now. There was never a gap for me.
Mm. Fair enough. So you're just a fan at this point and things like that. Did you always have a desire to do something media related as a
Not at
career?
all. Not at all. No, I went into college. Even when I was, still watching wrestling, my goal, I had known, I remember this in seventh or eighth grade, I writing down, I want to be a psychologist one day. And I ended up getting my degree in psych, and I had been enrolled. I completed my bachelor's. I had gotten accepted into grad school. I was getting ready
Mhm.
to go in the fall. But then I was like, grad school's expensive. I want to be fully sure that this is what I want to do. So, I unenrolled and took some time off to work at they call it shoot job, day job, whatever you want to call
Mhm.
it. Um, just in the meantime, while I take maybe a semester or a year off. And then I started my podcast in between because I had some extra free time because all I was doing at that point was working. I didn't have any more school. So I started my own podcast. My friend Samira kind of helped me with that because she
Mm.
had already been doing interviews and in correspondence. But no, it started out as a hobby. Never intended it to kind of not escalate, but just ride this wave of momentum. It just transformed itself into something that I didn't even have any intention to make it a full-time career at all. No.
So I just remembered actually, we've done a
Yeah.
podcast on the moment where you was like, "Oh, I could do this as a full-time career." But for people that
Yeah.
may not know, that may have not checked that podcast out, what was the moment that you were like, "I'm enjoying this, but also this could be my full-time career"?
I mean, I have to credit, if you know me, I have to credit Mickey James for kind of starting that. I
Mm.
say it's a domino effect because 2019, 2020, I was really only doing my own podcast and just working and obviously just being active in the wrestling community. I wasn't doing much.
Mm.
Mickey James brought me aboard to help them out with God TV and launch their podcast. And then after that, I got brought onto a few sites that they had seen my work in collaborating with other creators and my own podcast, that brought me on to do more interviews and writing for their sites like SE Scoops and WrestleZone. Um, all while doing that part-time, still being full-time in my shoot job. But after I had gotten aboard to I was working for multiple sites at I think like 8 things going on at once. I was doing
Mm.
so much outside of my shoot job that I loved doing, but again, it was all part-time, and I'm like, I have so much on my plate that I want it to be full-time, but it was just again figuring out because wrestling is one of those niche industries that it's really hard to do full-time because it's not like a big, money. I mean, it is, but it's not like a mainstream
I know
thing
what you
really,
mean.
so I want, of course, I don't really think I wanted it to be full time until 2022 when I really started, I made I was writing weekly, I was doing interviews weekly, was balancing all that stuff. I'm like, I really want to make this full time because I love doing it. But it came down to, is it cost effective? Is it stable for me? Um and then a job opening came up for something that that I now work for, and then I adding that onto my plate essentially made it full time for me. So then that's when I felt confident enough in the fall of 2022 to make that full time.
Mm. Sounds like you have a very similar journey to the great man that is Muscle Man Malcolm. Because from conversations that I've had with both of you separately on the channel, he was also in university. Forgive me, Malcolm, but I can't remember what he was studying. But then he went, "I'm going to try wrestling media full time." Have you two had any similar conversations about this?
Not about that directly, but I am very good friends with Malcolm. We literally roomed in Survivor Series together. So
Mm.
I've traveled with him, and he's been, again, one I've been watching since way before I even came into wrestling. I think I've been watching him probably since 2017-ish or something like that. So I've been watching him for a while, so I've gotten to see his journey. But yeah, I definitely am a good close friend of him, and it's really exciting to see him now getting those
Oh yeah.
opportunities to make that full time for him, while he was balancing school and he's still, working a job. And he's sharpening his plate, with editing. Obviously he has the talent to do that, and interviews, run his own channel. He's rising above there. It's been really cool to see him getting some well-earned opportunities and recognition.
Mm. You talk about there people, Malcolm getting some well-earned opportunities and things like that. Who are some people that maybe are starting to make their name in wrestling media that you're like, by the end of 2024, I'd like to see them get some opportunities?
Yeah, so I have to shout out, she got a big opportunity last month. That's my good friend Astrid Pizarro.
Mm.
She is now affiliated with Body Slam, formerly worked for Love Wrestling. She's also affiliated with ODE podcasts. She had the opportunity to go to Royal Rumble, do media, do some interviews there. Her first ever media. That was me last year, at the Royal Rumble, my first ever WWE media thing. So, she's getting her foot down. And I feel like we're kind of in that similar space. Just it was me a year ago where I maybe felt I wasn't ready for it. But,
Mm.
sometimes getting opportunities when you aren't ready, pushes you to work even harder. And it really is a testament to the work that you're putting in and the potential that you have. So I think Astrid is definitely going to be one to keep your eye on in 2024.
Who are some people that maybe you said this last year that you're like, oh, we talked about Malcolm, but are there any others that you're like, I'm so glad to see them getting opportunities because I was hoping this would happen this time last year?
My another good friend of mine is my friend Alex, Queen of the Ring. She was also with me and
Mm.
Malcolm in Survivor Series. I want to say WrestleMania maybe last year. Was it Mania? It was Mania, or I think it was WrestleMania last year, of her getting into, doing WWE stuff. And then obviously she was at Survivor Series, was at the press conference with me as well. She was just at Rumble doing media. So again, she runs Church of Joshi. Obviously she has her own stuff with Queen of the Ring. She makes amazing content. She's been in the game longer than me. So she has a lot of more experience than I do. So I think it's awesome to see her again getting more opportunities and continuing to provide quality content. And she's very knowledgeable especially in the Joshi category, which I feel like
Mm.
is an underrepresented, underrepresented,
Underrepresentative?
yeah, underrepresented, kind of little pocket in wrestling.
That's very, very cool. So you talked about yourself a year ago at the Royal Rumble of 2023. Uh,
Three.
so we're both saying this now. It's still confusing. Anywho, what would you say to Ella, who was nervous at that Royal Rumble, to if you could have a conversation with her now that you've been to two?
Um, just keep going. Obviously I want to do more, and I've had a taste for it, but I think I'm still working my way into it. Don't move too fast, but also I was nervous, but I was very fortunate that I had some veterans, some seasoned veterans there who were graciously willing to help me. And I think I said this, Sean Rossap, Emily Mayheller, I would have not have made it through that trip without them helping me, especially through my first one. So thank you to them. I got my foot in it. I obviously have a little bit of my foot in the door. I want to do more, obviously, and I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing and hope to do more because this is what I love. And but it's also being reasonable too with my not getting my expectations up too high.
Totally. So you talk about this is doing what you love and things like that. How does Ella deal with burnout? Because we all get it with as content creators where we're like, I have this to do, I have this to do, I have this to do. But then also you want to be a fan. So how do
Yeah.
you not mix the two? What's the word I'm looking for? How do you
Balance.
balance the two? Thank you. How do you balance the two? But then also make sure that Ella is still a wrestler.
I'd say a little bit, not totally. It's been a little bit easier because I've had some things taken off of my plate in the last couple of months, so it's been a little bit easier. But I also know myself well enough that, I'm already watching and covering wrestling 6 days. I'm covering wrestling 6 days a week.
Mm.
And watching, multiple days of programming. I know that there are certain days that I'm like, or certain nights that I'm like, I just unplug. I've gotten a lot better of unplugging and focusing on my interests and my loves outside of wrestling. So honestly, I don't think I've felt as burnt out as especially I was a year ago. I'm more cognizant and I make an effort, a conscious effort to like unplug, whether it's from Twitter or, you don't need to watch wrestling live every single day. You can go back and,
Mm.
watch it on replay. I don't feel that pressure anymore to really do that. But I also kind of have to because again, I write wrestling news 6 days a week, so I kind of have to. But I don't pressure myself anymore. If I want a break, sometimes you need a break just from wrestling as a whole, even just watching it and consuming it. So I definitely spend a lot of time dedicating to my interests outside of wrestling.
What are some niche interests that maybe our fans might think, oh, that's pretty cool that Ella's a fan of that?
So I mean, whether it's just shows, I've gotten hooked on a show recently that I've been watching outside. It's The Rookie.
I love The Rookie so much.
I only have 6 more episodes before I'm all caught up. So I've watched 5 seasons in 11 days. Um, so
Wow. Aren't there like 22 episodes in a season?
yeah. Again, that I'm conscious about it. Once I'm like off, I'm off of wrestling. So I found time that I've filled to not think about wrestling, as you can tell. But if I'm like finding a show or finding a movie that I'm like interested in, like that's one. But I also love watching YouTube. Like Smosh is a channel that I've watched for years. That whole organization. I watch a lot of gaming on Twitch. I'm still in the Among Us phase, guys, and like
Oh
Town of
wow.
Salem. I'm very like simple games. I like watching Jackbox. Survivor, again, it's the off season right now, but once Survivor starts back up at the end of this month, Wednesdays are dedicated to Survivor for me.
Yeah. Isn't there normally
Um
a tweet that goes out? Sorry guys, no
yes.
wrestling Survivor series. Survivor series? No,
Survivor.
Survivor,
Yeah.
sorry.
Wednesdays for me are Survivor. I've also been watching The Traitors, which has been great. I love watching reality TV. So yeah, I have a lot of things to keep me occupied outside of wrestling, which is really nice.
As a big Rookie fan myself, I'm really curious to know this. Were you someone, because Rookie clips go around on TikTok all the time,
That's
were
how I
you
got into
someone
it.
that discovered it through that?
Yes, that is because it's always The Rookie, and that's how I got hooked onto Chicago Med,
Mm.
which I watched 7 of the 9 seasons, so I went through, but so that's kind of the same thing that happened to me with Chicago Med. I saw clips, and I'm like, I'm spending so many hours watching clips of full episodes. Why don't I just watch the actual freaking series? So I did that. That's how I got hooked onto The Rookie. It's always The Rookie and 911 on my page recently.
Mm.
So after The Rookie, I'm planning on watching the 911 series, that I think is on Hulu as well.
It's
Um,
not in it. It's not in the UK, but it's
yeah, so I think I'm on season 5, episode 18 right now, halfway through.
oh, you've got some
And the
good ones.
and then so I'm gonna finish this before the season 6 premiere. That's on the 20th. That's next week. So I was
I
just like,
wish I
I'm just
lived in
gonna
the
watch
US just for
this.
these shows. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. Part of me thinks, oh, I need a VPN just for uh, these shows. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like we could do an entire podcast on The Rookie. I'm not gonna lie because I love
We
that show.
could. I literally have like 5 or 6 more episodes to go before I'm done. Before I'm caught up anyway.
Before we get off the Rookie talk, best character, your favorite character.
Ugh. Starting off, I mean, man, it's so cool to see how far Tim has come in
Mm.
there. And Tim and Lucy, I'm like, oh, they had it's such a great evolution compared to the first episode. I guess spoiler alert, well, where Tim, boots Lucy out of the car. And for those who know that that's a pun right there. Um, boots her
Sorry,
out of
I
the
know.
car.
That's why I laughed.
Yeah. Um, it's so I'm so invested in it. I'm always one who likes crime dramas too, like I love Law and Order SVU, NCIS,
I
Law
was
and
just going
Order
to ask you about
OC.
NCIS actually.
Yeah, I love NCIS too as well. I'm very sad that Ducky died last year, which that's
Have
very
you
sad.
seen
Um,
the trailer for? Because as we record this, this is
yeah.
going to date this podcast massively. But as we record this, they're doing a tribute episode to him
Oh, are
this
they?
coming Monday. Have you seen the
Yeah.
trailer for that?
I haven't yet, but I'm probably gonna cry.
If I can find it when we finish recording, I will send you the trailer because I'm not someone that cries, but geez Louise.
Yeah, shout out to David McCallum, acting, when
Mm.
this series started, I think he was like 72,
Something
73,
like that.
and we're on like what season, about season
21?
20, 21. Yeah. So he was like 90,
He was
90
90 when he
something when,
passed away.
yeah, when he passed. So he was still acting, you know, through his 70s, 80s and all of that. Shout out to David McCallum.
Yeah, definitely. Rest in peace, Ducky. Anywho, before people completely switch off, because this is a wrestling podcast, I'm not gonna lie, you know how it is. But I like to talk about different interests of my guests because I think people
Yeah.
forget we're not just programmed wrestling fans. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, like especially, you know, I haven't over the last, I would say, well, technically, I guess it's been starting since I started watching The Rookie. So it's been a week and a half. I've backed off of Twitter a little bit. You know, I'll check it in, but it's been really nice to be off and not feel like I have to be on to consume or relay the latest wrestling news. It's been really nice to be able to focus my energy on something other than that, you know?
Definitely. So you talked about there focusing your energy and stuff. When you are given, because you still do some great interviews for WrestleZone and places like that. When you are given, excuse me, when you are given a assignment, shall we say, of your interviewing this person, what's your research like? How deep do you go? Things like that.
I just want to not, I guess, clarify. I would say 95% of the interviews I do or I coordinate myself or I
Oh,
seek out
okay.
myself.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Um sometimes they kind of fall into my lap. But for most of the time I do. But either way, that doesn't really change my research process really. I guess it depends though, because if it's like an independent wrestler or a, you know, a non-major company interview, you have more leeway to talk about stuff. When it's like a contracted wrestler or something, sometimes, you know, you go through PR and, you know, you can't talk about certain things or you can only talk about certain things related to the event or the company. So it changes a little bit. But for the most part, I love, honestly, research is one of my favorite things to do. You know, there's some tricks that I obviously always go through their Instagram, always listen to at least two of their former interviews, or if I can find ones that are in writing form, even better. But Twitter, I would say, is the most useful tool. Is going back, you can search old tweets by keywords. So that's how I find them, by searching those keywords and going through some and finding some old fun facts about them or things they love outside of wrestling. So I'd say at the very least, all my interviews take at least an hour, somewhere between an hour to 2 hours, depending how long their past interview episodes are or how well I already know them. But I love doing research and coming up with questions.
Who is one of your, say you know you're going to be doing an interview with XYZ wrestler, who is your favorite wrestler not interview, to research the interview, should I say?
To research, or that like I wouldn't need to do research on.
No, 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 no. So you know you're going to interview, I'll give you an
Hmm.
example. Jamie Hayter, for example. Who is like your favorite person to research when you know you've got an interview coming up?
Oh, that I've already interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, That's my favorite. Honestly, I think she's an independent wrestler, Becca. She is so fascinating because she is a, you know, she used to be in a band, you know, she's named the international pop star. She's gone through multiple kind of character changes and I've gotten to interview her through all three or four of those character evolutions. So honestly, I think because she has such an interesting background, she's very charismatic. She also has like a kind of part-time career in music, a genuine career in music. She's released some songs and she's had opportunities on mainstream. She's traveled across the world. So she has a lot of interesting facets about her. Which I need to catch up with her because interviewed her last year, so we're kind of due for one. So that
Mm.
might encourage me now to get another follow-up. But I would say Becca is one of like the most interesting and fascinating people to kind of coordinate questions for.
That's a very, very cool. Do you have anywhere? Who is still on your bucket list? Do you like? I haven't done an interview with them yet. Who would you still like to interview?
There's so many, but at the top of my list is Jamie Hayter. She was one of the two people that kind of She and Britt Baker were my introduction to independent wrestling. I obviously knew what it was, for the longest time, but I was very closed-minded to it. I only watched like the main like WWE, TNA,
Mm.
and stuff like that. But in 2019, when WWE ran Super Showdown, I saw a thing on Twitter that Pro Wrestling Eve was running kind of a counter to that. It was called Super She Down. It's an all women's promotion. So they had a whole live stream of a lot of their past matches, series of matches, and Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter that was the first match I saw, which really got me hooked and kind of led me to the door of independent wrestling. And now I've interviewed a bunch of independent wrestlers across multiple platforms. So Jamie Hayter for me would come full circle. Um, Obviously, Charlotte Flair is one. If you know me, that's another dream
Mhm.
one. She's one of the two people in my dream match. Adam Copeland is one. Man, now that he's in AEW, maybe can make it happen. Dakota Kai and Adam Page. I would say those are my top five kind of dream interviews that I'm sitting on and hoping that they can one day manifest into
I
reality.
I hope they do, because you've always been incredibly kind to me, and just like I hope they happen for you because you're very nice. I'm not gonna lie.
Thank you. I hope so too. I especially Jamie's is very, it's kind of full circle for me. That really opened the door once I really got hooked on indie wrestling. That was kind of the premise of my podcast for a while, was highlighting a lot of the girls
Mm,
on the indies. So I kind of obviously have to credit her and Britt Baker for doing that.
I get what you're saying completely there. So I realized, because we went on a rookie tangent, we didn't really talk about burnout and how you deal with it. So when you talked about the fact that you don't feel as obligated to watch wrestling and stuff like
Mm.
that, but like on days that you feel burned out as a content creator, what do you do?
I think it goes back to, again, kind of taking that step back, and obviously there's going to be times of stress, but it's also diverting that energy to something other than what you're anxious about or other than wrestling. So again, I think it just kind of goes back to keeping finding stuff that I enjoy outside of work and outside of wrestling, or having as easy as playing games with my friends. Me and my friends have weekly game nights over Discord, something to look forward to. Or me and my friend one me and my one of my friends do virtual movie nights where we'll sit on FaceTime and watch a movie together on Netflix. Or again, watching YouTube, watching TV shows that are not wrestling, just finding stuff that I enjoy outside of wrestling that I know like brings me joy.
I get what you're saying there. What brings you joy currently in wrestling?
Ooh. Let me think. Because not a lot of, some of my favorite people they're injured right now or not wrestling. So it's really sad. Um, you know, like programming wise or like work wise.
Uh, can we do both?
Yeah. Um, Let me think. Obviously I'm really excited to see, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm really excited to see, assuming it's true, where Mercedes Moné can land in AEW and
It
what they're gonna do
may
with
have
her.
happened by the time this airs. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
yeah. So that, again, that's supposed to reportedly be happening at Big Business. I'm so interested to see where she is going to be going. Are they going to put her right against Tony Storm? Is she going to slowly build her way up? Again, we haven't seen her in full form outside of WWE. We got a little teaser last year in New Japan and Stardom, but then she got injured. So we really haven't seen Mercedes Moné in a full run yet, I
Mhm.
feel like. So, and it's going to be in a new environment there's going to be some people she's worked with before, but overall a new roster of people to work with. So I'm really excited to see how that unfolds.
I see what you're saying completely there. So, as we look at wrapping this up pretty soon, before we do genetic questions, which is a staple on this channel, because I'm excited to see if your answers have changed and things like that, we're going to do a quick word association game. I'm going to say some members of the wrestling media, and you're going to say 3 words to describe them. Uh,
Three.
with, yeah,
Okay.
or a word. It's up
Okay.
to you. Muscle Man Malcolm.
Oh man. So we have a group chat that's WWW that we're like getting wins. So I have to say W because we're trying to score those wins.
Alex Queen of the Ring.
Oh, I've gotten a lot closer with her recently. Underrated, and underappreciated. She's really good at what she does, and I hope she deserves more opportunities.
Miss K Faber. Kate from Fightful.
Kate has always been very kind with me, and compassionate with me.
Mm, Samara. Is it Samira? I
Samira,
always feel like I say it wrong. Sorry.
yeah, Samira, that's my sister. We've been friends since before Twitter, before either of us went down this path. It's been 10 years this year, so my sister.
Sean Ross Sapp.
Sean Ross Sapp. Oh my gosh. Man, he's there's so much I could say about him. He's a goof, but also like he is very selfless when it comes to helping me. So a selfless goof.
And then finally, I don't know how, if you can answer this one, but Denise Salcedo.
Oh yeah, inspiration, she really is kind of I feel like no, I change it. The standard, especially for women in wrestling media, I feel like she's at the very top. Everybody looks up to her. Again, she's also been one who's kind of helped me along the way a little bit. So I would say the standard.
And then finally, I'd feel like a goof if I didn't add this one, but Mickey James.
Mickey James, again, my mom, my hero. I'm very grateful for her.
And then before we do generic questions, I have two questions for you. Do you view your career in wrestling media so far as a success? And if it came to an end tomorrow, what would you want your legacy to
You know, I think I've been very fortunate with some of the opportunities I've had, especially considering I've only been doing this, say, full time for 16 months.
be?
In the grand schemes of things, I would say, yeah, I've gotten to do a lot of things that a lot of people haven't to do. But obviously, in my own mind, I want to do more. So I think in the grand schemes of things, I would say yes. But in my own mind, I want to say no because I want to do and I know I can do so much more. What would I think my legacy would be? I think it would be spotlighting women's wrestling, which I still do. Every I think there was only 2 or 3 weeks last year where I didn't have an interview with the women's wrestler. Even though I'm not doing my own podcast right now, I'm still spotlighting women's wrestling through my writing and through interviews almost every week of the year. So I think that would be my legacy, would be spotlighting women's wrestling.
That's very, very cool. And something you do very well, I'm not gonna lie. So as we
Thank you.
wrap this up, Ella, we are gonna do a segment that I call generic question. You know what this is, we've done this before, where I will ask you the questions you might be asked on social media, such as your favorite match, favorite overall pay-per-view card, such as Double or Nothing 2019, favorite wrestler's entrance theme, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler. So what's your favorite match of all time?
So hard. All time, it's so hard. I don't know if I have a all time, obviously, Charlotte, man, that was an emotional match last year between Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, and that kind of goes along with my favorite card of all time. Um, that was an emotional match. In recent memory, I would say that is probably my favorite in recent memory. There's also a match that's really underrated. Mercedes Martinez and Kylie Ray. It was a no
Mm.
ropes submission match at Rise, which is really, again, when I was going down the rabbit hole of indie wrestling, that was one that stood out to me. Um, I also love, I want to say it was at Breaking Point, John Cena, Randy Orton,
I quit.
um, I Quit. Yeah, that's like John Cena and Randy Orton, they were in like a feud when I was getting started in wrestling. So that was like, I remember going back, that's like a staple of like, the John Cena Randy Orton fandom.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, you teased your favorite card there. So what's your favorite card of all time?
I think, WrestleMania last year, night one, I will never forget, just excluding the opening. I love John Cena in Austin Theory, but excluding the opening, I think that might be my favorite card because after that night, after KO and Sammy won the tag titles, just after that night, I just remember crying like and I had tweeted it out like this is the reason this night is the reason why I love professional wrestling. It's the combination of the characters, the action, the emotion, the storytelling, just so well put together for the majority of the night. So I would say in recent memory, especially that one, I remember being really emotional after that night.
And then favorite wrestler's entrance theme.
Man, people are gonna um there's so many, Metalingus obviously is a staple, but like MVP, people make fun of me because this is like I feel like an underrated one, but MVP's I'm Coming theme song, like just it has like everything for me. It's really underrated. I can listen to that all the time, but also like Keith Lee, Bask in His Glory, Sasha Banks, Sky's the Limit, it's in the group of those four, I feel like.
Fair enough. And who's your favorite tag team of all time?
DX, specifically Shawn and Triple H, but the Hardy Boys are a very close second for me.
Okay. You gave me two answers there. This could have happened in WWE, but comments, please don't call me out if I'm wrong. So we are going to fantasy book this. The Hardys in their prime versus DX in your favorite era. Where does this happen? Who goes over? What's the stipulation?
Well, the stipulation has to be something like hardcore-ish. I don't think ladders would lean in too much. I would say probably in a steel cage. Because Jeff can still get in, his high flying stuff. He can go off the top rope, Shawn can be very dramatic, in his super kicks. Triple H can have his sledgehammer. Matt Hardy obviously can have his table moments, and you can have ladders in there too. So I would say in a steel cage. Um, I I think DX would probably go over. Man, it's tough. I think DX would go over, and I love the Hardy Boys, but I think DX has more stock overall than the Hardy Boys. I do believe the Hardy Boys are definitely featured WWE Hall of Famers, but overall, I think the DX has more stock to them, so I think I would put DX over. And I think they would genuinely be booked to win that match anyways.
Forgot to say, or maybe I didn't, and it's just slipped my brain. Where's this match taking place?
Like a pay-per-view?
In the timeline as well. Like
Oh,
in the
timeline.
timeline, if we have a DeLorean, where's this match taking place and what pay-per-view?
Hmm. I could fantasy book this, the Hardy Boy. I mean, I think you have to go with like 2001 Hardy Boys, they were very young and hungry and very fearless during that time. I think you have to go with like 2000 or 2001 Hardy Boys. Um, Against, I would probably say 2006 DX because there could be some shenanigans in there. Um, what pay-per-view would it be at? I mean, the first one, maybe it could just be in Hell in a Cell. I did say Steel Cage, but like Hell in a Cell is very similar to that. So I would say book it at a Hell in a Cell and make it a Hell in a Cell then.
Fair enough. And as we wrap this up, Ella, who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
It is Shawn Michaels. It's no surprise there. Shawn, Shawn overall, he is great as a character. He is feel like the epitome of a like not only a wrestler but a sports entertainer as well. He had that heart. He had his selling abilities were on par. He could make you laugh. He could make you hate him. He could also, make you cry. I feel like overall to me he is the greatest of all time, and he's also my favorite of all time. Mickey James is a very, very, very close second, though. But Shawn Michaels is forever my number one.
That's very, very cool. I may have asked you this question when you've been on before, but I'm going to ask you again since you said Shawn Michaels is your favorite of all time. I believe I know the answer, but 90s Michaels or 2002 to 2010 Michaels?
I mean, again, I I haven't gone back and watched a lot of, I would say, early 90s Sean. So I don't, for me growing up, it was 2000 Sean. So I know a lot of people might say 90s Sean, but as a girl who was born in 1997, I have to say 2000 Sean because that's what I went back and grew up with.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. So as we wrap this up, Ella, obviously I want to say thank you for another great conversation. But the question I end this show on is, I believe as content creators, we're all sort of going to live forever, some sort of very strange way if you think about the word. So what is one piece of content you're like, I'd like to be remembered for that? Then what is one that you're like, yuck, please forget about that?
Yuck, please forget, I feel like is my first episode of my podcast because I remember recording that like 8 times, at least the second half of it, because the first half was an interview with Samira. I remember recording the second half like 8 times because I hated the sound of my voice. I didn't really know what I was doing. And also it was my first time editing. So it's always gonna be your first piece, you know?
Mm.
Um, Something that I'm really proud of though. Um, I don't know if it's like, does writing count? Do you count that as
Yeah,
content? Yeah. So I feel like being published in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the 2021 Women's 150 list, I wrote a feature piece on NWA's first ever all women's pay-per-view Empower. I attended that show in person, did a lot
Ooh,
of interviews there. And I got to speak with Mickey James, Chelsea Green, and Deanna Perrazzo. Again, writing about the piece, but also talking about the importance of women's wrestling and what kind of this night celebrated and symbolized for, women's wrestling as a whole. So I feel like that was really special to me that I was invited to write about that in a kind of, a prestigious magazine that I grew up, reading all the time.
that's very, very cool. So as we wrap this up, Ella, obviously I want to say thank you for coming back on. Thank you for another great conversation. But please promote yourself. Where can the good people find you? Your content, everything in between, because it's well worth following you.
Yeah, so the easiest way to follow me, I said I haven't been as active on there the last week because I've been passionately watching The Rookie. There goes my camera. One
Mm.
sec. That
Oh.
would happen. The easiest way to follow me is on Twitter. I don't call it that other thing. It's always Twitter to me, damn it. At it's Ella J. If you go to the link tree, the link in my bio has all my links to my projects, podcasts, and writing, and all that fun stuff. So yeah.
It's well worth doing, guys. Not only one of the hardest working people in this space, but one of the nicest as well. Hell, she's done my podcast 4 times. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, 4, yeah.
because you count the Fightful thing as well. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you guys like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or X at Tom Talk Trash, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.